Good day, Africa, and welcome to AAU Talks here on AAU TV. And my name is Kwesi Sam. This morning we are looking at Agenda 2063, the role of the youth, and it's actually the continuation of the show we had last week, where we looked at the first and the second aspirations of the Agenda 2063. We'll go for a short commercial break, and when we return, I would introduce my guests who are ever ready to join us to have a beautiful discussion on the third and the fourth aspirations of Agenda 2063. This is AAU TV. You can join the conversation via our social media platforms, AAU on Facebook, and then AAU_67 on Twitter. After the commercial break, you'll get to know my guests. Stay tuned.
Anyone can get an education, but not everyone gets quality education. It's never too late to acquire it. The University of Lusaka, a modern private university located off Ali Kinkata Road in Lusaka, Zambia, offers undergraduate, master's, and PhD degree programs in the School of Business and Management, Law, Economics, Banking and Financial Services, Public Administration, Governance and International Relations, Education, Engineering and the Built Environment, and Health Sciences. Our curriculum is practical and designed to meet the changing needs of employers, business, and society. Because at Unilas, we make students think outside the book. Our driving force is a passion for quality education. We build graduates fit for purpose. Enroll now for January or June intakes. For more information, log on to www.unilas.ac.zm.
From the commercial break, and before we left for the commercial break, I told you my guests are ready, and so I would want to introduce them to you shortly, and then we start the discussion. We are looking at the third and the fourth aspirations of Agenda 2063. First to be introduced is our regular panel member, Ms. Irene Dufie, who is a project manager or project officer here at the Association of African Universities. You are welcome, Ms. Addai.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Great. The second panel member to be introduced is Mr. Schenineda, who is also a project management assistant here at the Association of African Universities. You are welcome, Kweku.
Thank you, Kwesi.
How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Your smile tells me everything is okay.
Everything is okay.
Wonderful. Then the third panel member to be introduced is Mr. Samuel Ajapon. And Samuel Ajapon is also a project officer here at the Association of African Universities. Samuel, you are welcome.
Thank you, Kwesi.
Great. So this morning, I'm so happy that you could make it to the show. And this is a continuation of what we had last week, where we looked at the first two aspirations of Agenda 2063, where we are looking at the role of young people in achieving the agenda. But just a brief of a recap for our viewers who couldn't join us for the first show, we were looking at a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainable development, where we were able to look at the issues and then what must be done to ensure that we get to the Africa we want by the next 50 years. And then we also went ahead to look at an integrated continent that is politically united based on the ideals of Pan-Africanism and then African Renaissance, where we looked at we championing our own values and our customary rights and everything as Africans, and believing in what we have and what we can do to spearhead our own growth and development as Africans. Today we are moving a step further to look at the third and the fourth aspiration. And I love the fourth aspiration, which says that Africa must be peaceful. A peaceful continent where anybody at all on the globe can just come into Africa. And the third aspiration, we are looking at how we can guard ourselves, protect our values, and also make sure that we allow rule of law to work on our continent, where we are promoting good governance, because we believe that if we have good governance, then all the other spheres of development will follow. Let me start with you, Mr. Ajapon, just as I do almost all the time. Let me just, for the purpose of our viewers to know the third aspiration. The third aspiration talks about an Africa of good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. As young people, how can we ensure that this aspiration is achievable before the next 50 years?
Well, thank you very much for your question. Like you rightly said, as young people, what can we do? Most often, when it comes to developmental policies, we normally do the top-down approach. But then let's have a good look at this issue. Let's look at it from the bottom up. What are the youth doing?
Okay.
What am I doing? What are you doing, Kwesi? One, we need to educate ourselves about the policies and also take hold of the policy and implement advocacy plans for it. Okay, so governments are engaged in, or let's say in the political season, they use these youth to do a lot of crime, and then also they instigate a lot of violence in our country. How can we ensure good governance as youth? Let's not engage ourselves in these kinds of politics. Let's rather address issues. Let's focus on issues on how we can develop our nation. And this in all goes together and then brings peace into our various countries. So for the African youth, it is important to, one, educate ourselves on these policies, and then also undertake advocacy programs in order to which will lead to good governance across the continent. Thank you.
Let me take your perspective, Mr. Ankomah. We have a universal culture of good governance. What must be done?
Okay, thank you, Kwesi. Kwesi, the aspiration we aspire that in Africa we're going to have capable institutions first in place, and then we also want to have transformational leadership at all levels and then in all fields. So talking about the fields, if you come to the country, let's take the structure of the country for instance. We have the presidency, that is one form of leadership in Africa. We also have religious institutions, we have academic institutions, we have a whole lot of institutions, and we have leaders in all these institutions. And we're saying that we aspire to have transformational leadership in all these fields. But then, most in Africa, we have this erroneous thinking that leadership is always at the presidency. But that is not the case. And so we are always looking at the president to implement policies that will cause a change or a transformation in all the levels. But that is not the case. You have an academic institution. You have the vice chancellor, that is the leader. And then we also have the registrars, head of departments. They are all leaders in that field. Okay. We expect that all of them will be transformational. You come to the religious side, we have pastors, we have imams, we have the traditionalists. They are all leaders in their own fields. And then we expect that they're going to be transformational in whatever they do. That way, looking at the general picture, we are going to transform Africa. Now, coming to the role of the youth. In terms of governance, I want to leave the other parts to Irene, and then, looking at the leadership. We see, in Africa, we the youth, sometimes we sit back and then we expect the government to do everything for us. We fail to recognize that we are also leaders in our own fields. Let's go to our institutions, for instance, our universities. We have leaders, SLC presidents. They are leaders. If you go to these national unions, we have the National Students' Union. So
across the continent.
Likewise, we have some in Ghana. They are all leaders, and then they're supposed to recognize that they are leading an institution. And they shouldn't sit and expect the government to initiate policies before they pick up. They need to be transformational in their position that they've been given. That's what we, the youth, must do. By that, we are setting example for the others to also follow, because we are the youth, and then the agenda is speared towards the youth. So I expect that the youth will also take care of wherever they find themselves and then lead in a transformational way. So
just as brightening the corner wherever you find yourself. Yes. That's great. Let me get to you, Ms. Dufie. Let me take your initial comment or your initial thought on good governance. Okay.
First of all, I will start by acknowledging what is happening in Nigeria, and as the age gap has been reduced on presidency, governorship, and senateship in Nigeria, the age has been reduced to include the youth, starting from 30 years to 45, I think, for the president, 40 for the president. And this is including the youth in the governance process. Most times we leave it for the old people to do it, but as we are now, in this globalized system, I think they are really outmoded, they are outdated, and it is up to the youth to take on the mantle of leadership to ensure good governance. So I think, first of all, my first comment will be congratulations to Nigeria on passing this wonderful constitution to help the youth be part of good governance. You know, when we talk of rule of law, it's both the citizenry and it's also the government machineries to obey laws. And when this is effectively done in Africa, I think, first of all, we would have justice served. We would have people who are happy with what is going on in the country. And then when people are happy and when people are satisfied, it brings development, it brings improvement in every aspect of the economies. Yeah.
All right. So you raise a very beautiful point, and that has to do with the fact that we should allow the young people to be part of governance in Africa. But then I am not disputing that fact that having young people in governance automatically means that there will be good governance, because there has been instances where young people have been given platforms, opportunities, and they did even much more worse than the older people. Let me take your view, Mr. Ajaapong. How will we ensure that young people who are coming up are being groomed to make sure that they ensure that when they're given the opportunity, they spearhead wherever institution that they will be given to, they will make sure that there is good governance for the continent?
Okay, so it goes back to my point again: education, 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 and then giving them the chance for them to also show their skill or demonstrate their skill, like Dufie rightly said. So you pass a policy whereby age has been reduced, but then do the people have the capacity? Because even if you are going to look for a job, it's there, 3 years of working experience. Have I been put in that position whereby I exhibited good governance
qualities
or good qualities of leadership? No. Leadership needs to be groomed, or a leader needs to be groomed. So what are we doing as a continent in grooming this leadership? That's why I'm always happy when these topics come about, because AAU, for instance, has a lot of programs whereby youth leaders are being groomed from, let's say, basic leadership training to the advanced level. So I think there's a program which is also going to be organized by the AAU for continental educational leaders. So I think education and then grooming the next generational leadership is the key when it comes to getting good governance across the continent.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me get to you, because if you are looking at an Africa which has good governance, democracy, and respect for human rights, then gender inequality also comes in. How well have we been able to deal with gender inequality on the continent?
Kwesi, I will answer the question of gender equality, but then let me go back
on what Sam
said. Good. You were worried about the fact that we give the mantle to the youth and then they are not able to deliver, so they flatter to deceive. The issue has been that we, the youth, do not feel confident enough, we do not feel competent enough that we can handle the leadership positions when they are given to us. Let's take instances of these national leadership positions, student unions. Right now, we have a student leader that is being sponsored by a political party to lead, okay? And so the person comes to power, and then the policies that the person is implementing, or the things that the person is pushing for, is not motivated by the person himself or the people the person is leading. It's being motivated by the leader,
the party
machinery.
Yes.
So we have a youth that is leading the youth, and we expect them to implement policies that favors the youth, but then they're taking instructions from the older generations. You see the point? So most of the time, they end up leading exactly what the older generation is doing, and that is a problem. And so maybe if we're going to address that issue, leaders in Africa need to be competent enough. The youth need to be competent enough. They need to be independent from these political parties and then the influences of the older generation, and then take leadership as something we can do. And then make a transformation.
I think our thoughts are not being fair.
Yeah.
I think, to be honest, we are not being fair to the youth. I don't think youth are fallen when it comes to leadership positions. When you go to any of the African countries, 40 under 40, 30 under 30, these are people doing excellent jobs. So I don't think we are incapable of having good governance.
No, I think the point is, we are not saying that the young people are not capable of leading or exhibiting good qualities as leaders. But then we are saying that the norm has always been the fact that we are chastising the older people, that they are not doing exactly what they are supposed to do. And so let's bring young people into the system. We have records of countries who have given platforms to young people, and they couldn't perform, or they were not allowed to perform because of structures. My motivation is, how can we ensure that if we are advocating for young people to be in the system, there is a proper grooming, so that if any young person assumes a position, he has the right mindset, he has the right attitude, and he has what it takes to lead the people right.
Okay,
that is the context. Let us not get it wrong.
Let me come in here. Talking about what should be done. A country like Liberia has done it, and it's worked for them.
Sure.
Example is, since after years of war and all that, or political unrest, the country wanted to reface its civil service structures. So this is what they did. They did the next generational civil service leaders. So they got students, graduate students as associates, who will learn directly from the what's the name? Their leaders who are currently in power. So the minister, you learn directly under the minister, then undertake, or you are being given to be what innovative, or bring out your own initiative.
Thoughts and everything.
Yes, whilst you are being mentored by these people who are in position currently. So the system works so much that they are trying to take it to other African countries. They're the same model. So you go under training, you go under it's one theoretical, practical, and then you'll be given the chance or the platform to perform. So I think they are bringing it to Ghana and then Cote d'Ivoire, and then subsequently they'll be moving it to other countries. Yes. So that model can be adapted across African countries, and then we use it to see how we can have good governance across the continent.
All right. Let me take your thoughts, Mr. Ankomah.
Kwesi, on that issue, you see, it's a responsibility on us to groom the next top youth, the next top leaders for Africa. And so we cannot just leave them and then say that let them come up and then use their own experiences to lead. We need to take the responsibility of grooming these upcoming youth leaders. And for that matter, a program that AAU is organizing, and then what we are working on right now.
Not to cut you short. I want, maybe there's something I'm looking for.
Okay.
You see, the issue is the African Union has a lot of programs, leadership programs for young Africans.
Yes.
There are volunteer corps where young people are serving in various segments of leadership
across the
yes. The ECOWAS, that's the
Yali.
Yali is doing excellently well. We have the ECOWAS Commission also doing greatly. We have all the various regional economic communities are doing a lot for the young people. The African Development Bank is doing amazingly well for young people. But my problem is, what is there? Because I always say that if you want good leadership, it is not only the person. We have people who go to school, they read management, leadership, and everything. But when you put them in the institutions, things do not work. We have instances where we say that, oh, this man is a good man, this woman is a good woman. But I wonder how he or she couldn't perform in that office. That means that before we will have good governance, there is something that must work. And that is what we need to look at, the structure. Because if the structure is right, okay, definitely whoever you put in there wouldn't struggle. But if the structure is not correct politically, then you can put a saint in that office, but the person wouldn't be able to perform. That is where I want us to situate a discussion, so that when we are looking for avenues to groom young people, we know exactly what to tell them.
You see, the African Union thought of that, and that is why one of the aspirations under the third aspiration, they said that capable institutions.
Sure.
Yes. And it came even before transformational leadership.
Exactly.
And so it speaks to the fact that before we can even begin to think about leaders who fit into the right positions, we need to have institutions that are capable of what? Receiving whatever it's coming to them. And so for that matter, we need to work on getting our institutions right to begin with. And then, there's something that political parties, they do. And they do it very well. Maybe we can copy that. You see, they sit back and then in our institutions, whilst we are coming up, they identify people who are capable of handling certain situations, and they become targets. They sometimes poach them and say that, oh, we need you to do this. And right from the onset, they start grooming them. So first of all, they saw something in the person, and they know that we can use this person for this purpose. It's time that we, as a country, as a continent, we start doing all those things. You identify from the onset that this person can lead an academic institution. First identify, then you poach, and then you train.
Mentorship and everything.
Mentorship, everything. For the person to fit into that particular position. It wouldn't be like the person is a youth, the SRC president, or for that matter, when we give the person the position of, let's say, a manager for a top institution, the person is going to perform. We may be wrong. We can use the approach.
All right. Let me get before I come to let me take the thought of Ms. Addai, and I want us to come from this angle where we are looking at the political process, the processes that really put people into governance. Let's even not go to the national institution. Let's start from the young people and the SRC leadership or the student leadership. If someone wants to be a student leader, you must do campaign. If you don't have money or resources, definitely, no matter how excellent you are, the brilliant ideas you may have, you may not get the opportunity if the people around you haven't seen the light and what you can offer. And so more often than not, we have people who have the machinery, the money, the bigger support who come in to win. Now, if I have a political party financing my campaign, or if I have gurus or big people financing my campaign, then definitely when I come into leadership, I am not championing the ideas and innovative things that I have, but I'm just serving a master somewhere. How do we tackle our political processes to make sure that the processes are clean? And then when people come into governance, they have the free mind, the will to do right, and not any other thing else. Let me take your thought.
I think this is a very large question, and it would involve a lot of time to discuss that. First of all, I think having people help you campaign or pull money into your campaign, it's not bad. Okay. I think there are channels, there are right institutions where people in government have proper account, give proper account of how their campaigns are being funded. But as individuals coming up, you as a leader who wants to go into this position, what do you have in mind? What is your vision? What do you want to achieve at the end of your term? That is the most important thing. You can be funded by people. I think there are people who founded the campaigns by Donald Trump. He had the NRA, they have people who founded his campaign, but he knows his agenda. He knows what he wants to make America great. What you, as a student, what do you want, what is in your mind to make your school great? What do you have that would leave a legacy for you, where your name would forever be on the wall? People will come and they will tell them, this is what you did. So I think funding of campaigning, it's not even bad for the start. But I think that what we should do is, what is the interest of the people? That is what we should go in when we are vying for positions. And then we work towards that. There might be oppositions, but that is where we will have to stand firm in our grounds. That this is what we want to achieve. This is what we want to get. And by any means possible, we are getting that. And that is good governance. You are not deceived, or you are not, your ways are not changed from influences. But rather, you know what you want to do. You know where to get it. Because, to be honest, most brilliant people, good, exceptional leaders, do not have the means to.
Okay.
And that doesn't stop them from getting what they want. But you can get that being wise, prudent, know how to manage your authorities, know how to manage those who are helping you.
And even your position as well.
Of course.
All right, let me take your turn, Mr. Ankomah.
Key, we have two things, transparency and then accountability.
Sure.
So first of all, just like Irene said, you need to be transparent. Where are you getting your source? Where is the source of your finance?
Yes.
We will know all those things. Transparency to begin with. Everything, right from your campaign stages to where you become the president, everything needs to be transparent. Once it is transparent, people will be able to question places where there are red flags. Accountability. You come into power, you give a lot of promises. Even before you were influenced by the political gurus. You talked about the fact that you were going to do this, you were going to transform the SRC, you were going to do that. Now, at the end of your term of office, you need to be accountable to the people. And then not probably coming from them, but then coming from we, the youth, the students. We need to hold you accountable.
Okay.
And then on the day of reckoning, when we bring you and then we say that, bring your accounts. You said you were going to do that. Then you did that. Is there something you... So when we start questioning them and then holding them for accounts, next time when somebody is coming, you will have the political agenda, but then you may be forced to do what the people want.
Right. And that happens when the leader has a vision, or the country itself has a vision or has a developmental agenda or goal. That you come into office and you do nothing but just follow the goal and the vision. All right. We'll go for a short commercial break, and when we come back, we'll look at gender inequality and the fourth aspiration. This is AU Talks here on AAU TV, and we are discussing the third and the fourth aspirations of the Agenda 2063. The Africa we want, the role of young people. Stay tuned. We'll be back. All right, welcome back, viewers. This is AAU Talks here on AAU TV. Before we left for the commercial break, we were discussing Agenda 2063, the role of young people in ensuring that by the next 50 years we are able to implement, or we're able to see the Africa we want. Let me get to you again, Mr. Acheampong. We were looking at good institutions.
Yes.
And what young people can do to ensure that our institutions work. Now, let me give you a case example where you have a civil service institution. You may not be in the managerial role, you may not be a leader, but you find yourself as a simple worker. How can you make a change? How can you make a mark as a young person? If there are challenges, there are problems in the institution, how can you make a mark as a young person?
Well, experience has made me know that when you see a problem, you just don't walk to whoever is in charge and say, okay, I see a problem here. But then it's also important for you to go along with a solution. So you don't just go and then punch holes in somebody's duties or what the person is doing. But you go in there and then you show the person, okay, this is what I think we do, and then we will have the development that we need. So I think we should be approach issues in a more polite way. One, we can develop proposals, like your case example that you gave. I work in the ministries, or I'm a civil servant, and I find that, okay, the way Ghana is analyzing their sustainability is not the formula, or it's not the procedure, the right way to go about it. What can I do? Okay, I sit in my office, develop it, and then make all the corrections, point holes, and then, okay, because I can't just walk to my supervisor and say, this is not right. That's very disrespectful if you are not sending a solution. So you develop your own solution along with it, and you go politely to him, one-on-one, and then you discuss this issue with him. This is what I think we should do to move our country forward, or this what how I think, like the example, this is how I think Ghana should analyze their sustainability. This is how I think we should calculate automatic price adjustment and all that. So you can't just, as a youth, you can't just go there because one, you don't have the needed experience or exposure for that. The expertise, let me say that, because you are still learning on the job and all that, but then you found a hole in there. So how do you solve it? You write a nice proposal, you discuss it with your boss, or you go to your boss, you show him your solution, then you take it from there.
All right, let me take your thought.
Kwesi, you see, change does not just happen, you know,
overnight.
Yeah, overnight. You see, sometimes you are the youth, you have been given the opportunity to serve in an institution. Just like if you come to AAU, for instance, you know, we have a chunk of the staff being youth, okay? There's an opportunity that has been given, okay? Now, you find yourself as a youth in the institution. The leaders are watching. Once you start leading certain things, it may be minor in some small ways. Maybe the leaders will face a problem, and then you will come up with a solution. You know, you start it gradually, but then with time, you see that the leaders will be inviting you to the leaders' table because they know that you hold solutions and then answers to some of the problems they are encountering. You know, it's a gradual thing. So you find yourself moving along the ladder, and then gradually you find yourself at the top position.
So you just don't get up, start screaming, this is wrong,
this is wrong, and then start rioting and all. No. It's a gradual process. Like he said, you bring solutions. Always when the leaders meet, you have something to say, something exceptional, something transformational, something that befits the current generation. And then gradually, see, the youth, the leaders will recognize that, look, this person has some potential. So anytime they meet, they will invite you. That is the way to go. Gradually, you find yourself at the top. And then you will now be steering affairs. And that is the way to go.
But let me ask you, Ms. Dufie, in instances where the two presentations they made are the ideal situation. There are times you identify a problem. I had a friend who was working in a bank, and then there was a major problem with the bank he identified. And then he started working on the problem, telling the leaders, we must do A, B, C, we must do A, B, C. And they told him, just look, you just came yesterday. You better shut up. This is how we have operated in
we are
over.
Surviving.
Yes, and we are surviving. But the young man with his expertise knows the right thing to be done. But he was asked to shut up. In such instances, how do you survive as a young person and still make sure that you protect your personal integrity, you protect your working integrity, and also ensure that the right thing is done?
It's very difficult in such instances. I think I had the opportunity of doing my national service at a very huge place in Ghana, which I wouldn't mention. And when I went there, I found fault. I found holes that were easily, where you could close them easily. You didn't need, it wasn't rocket science.
You needed a manager too.
But we went around, we asked our opinions on what are some of the things that could be done. When we found them, we went there, we gave them the solutions to it, and nothing was done about it. At the end of the day, we left our national service places. We are back. They still have these problems. These problems have not been solved. That is the problem with our systems, our institutions. The structures, the bureaucracies are too much.
Back to institutions.
Yes, everything goes back to institutions. Everything goes back to the structures. Everything goes back to the leadership, the people in position. They won't allow, they wouldn't make the system flexible, that things that needs to be done. They are always rigid. They are always so tight that they can't give you a breathing space.
Space, exactly.
And so some are laid back. Some people won't go back to tell them how the solutions, how the problems can be helped. But some would go. It depends on the individual. But I think as the youth, these are some of the things that we still need to push regardless, whether we are being listened to or not.
Sure.
We are supposed to talk. We are supposed to voice it out. Whether we go beyond our supervisors, go to the top directly, whether from letters, something should be done. You know, something should be done. We have, what I'm trying to say is that there are risks involved in doing these things. And are you willing to take these risks? I think that is what we should be. We shouldn't be fearful. We shouldn't be thinking that what would happen to me when I say these things. But rather, we should look at the bigger picture. That when I get these things done, it would cause a change.
We having generational thinkers.
Exactly.
Yes.
It would cause a change. So these things are important, that no matter how the case goes, no matter the repercussions along that comes with it, we should fight. We should still go on. All right,
that's brilliant.
Yes.
Sam, let me come to you.
Yes.
You see, ever since I was as a young person, every day I hear these things: institutions,
yes,
structures. They are still the same. Anytime you come up with a problem, the very first thing that comes up is our institutions are not working, our structures are not working. What exactly can we do? Because if we're not careful, in the next 50 years, we'll still come back and sit here and say institutions, structures.
Yes.
But these institutions are being managed by human beings. They're being managed by people. And so where is exactly the problem? Is it with the people who are managing the institutions, or the structures are wrong?
Okay.
I find it too much of a problem.
Okay, so to answer your question, I would like to go back to a bit of experience and then some models that I've worked through already. Let's talk about institutions. What is an institution? That's the first question we should ask ourselves. So you say institution, is it the government machinery? Is it the ministers? Is it the parliamentarians? Institutions are the individuals within these institutions.
Good.
So I am an institution within AAU. What I do reflects what AAU does.
It's supposed to do, yeah.
You understand? So without the people, the institution do not work. So there is a need to build capacity of the individuals within these institutions, and also to have their integrity intact. Yeah. Because one thing that is killing African institutions is corruption. And we need to have good moral values in order to fight these corruption issues, or we need to have integrity in all our dealings, and then be also accountable. We need to put structures in place whereby people in leadership positions are very accountable to whatever they do. You understand? You can say that, okay, yeah, we have the constitution which clearly states all these things, but why is it not happening? Yes, it still comes down to us. We need our integrity. There was a study done by Asimoglu, a renowned development economist, who was trying to find what we are looking for now. And he used colonial systems and then to make his analysis or make his conclusion. And he said that, okay, in countries whereby the colonial masters established institutions are functioning very well. And they gave a lot of examples. Let's take South Africa. You understand? There was an institution that was created by the British system, whereby they oversee the other countries, the administration of the other countries. And then there are a lot of countries that was listed in that study, and then they were based on the fact that these Europeans didn't survive when they came to the African countries. And then they had to establish their major administrative institutions in maybe South Africa, who oversees the whole of Central Africa. So they had good institutions coming up already. But in places where they didn't stay, they didn't have good institutions. And after we had our democracy, what have we done? Have we been able to build institutions to match up with those in the Western world? No. We've done it, but it still comes down to us, me and you. We need our integrity.
And that is where the problem comes in. So even if we are talking about we having a universal culture of good governance, then judiciary systems must also work. And likewise the other settings.
Yes.
But we need a judiciary system working so much effectively in such instances.
Yes.
What do we make of our court systems in Africa? Systems where if you don't have money, you are always found guilty, and if you have money and have influence, you go through the system so peacefully, no matter what happens.
Yes.
I read on social media where someone just went to steal, I think, one CD or so, and the person was sentenced, and someone has taken billions of dollars, and the person is still working. How do we ensure that some of these systems work? Let
me come again, pardon me for talking too much, but then the former Deputy UN Secretary General the former, he's called Jan Ellison. He made mention of a triangle for a country to be developed or to push the development agenda. We need peace, we need development, and then we need human rights and respect for the rule of law. These things work in a triangle. So to have development, you need a peace of mind. You need to have good education. You need to have water. You need to have
basic amenities.
And that leads to development. But how do we sustain these things? There needs to be the rule of law. We need to respect each other. I can't offend Schenineda based on our religious differences or our cultural differences. We need the rule of law. We need to respect each other in order to develop.
All right. Quickly, let me take your thoughts before we go to the fourth aspiration.
Okay, so you see, before the institutions can change, we need to have some form of education. Then, sometimes you educate the citizens to a certain point, and then they start questioning existing institutions. So first, we knew that this thing was right. It gets to a point, we are highly educated, and then we get to know that, no, this thing we thought was right.
You could do it differently.
Yeah, it isn't right after all. We start questioning, and then things will change. That is how institutions evolve. And then, once we start pushing for this, we need to have some form of protection. If you are not protected, and then there's the system of rule of law, democracy is not working, and then you're pushing for something, you realize that you'll be there, and then the security forces will invade your home and then say, you are doing this, you are doing that. No, that's not what's supposed to happen. If you are supposed to do that, then definitely we are not going to have any change. So the institutions need to work. We need to push for it, and then we need to be protected by the law, the judicial system. The courts needs to function. It shouldn't be that the person of high political power, because the person has the power, everything,
can influence.
It can influence the actions of the court I do something, I know this thing is not right, and I'm pushing that it will be made right, the person can intimidate me or something. The court needs to be independent of that high power and then be able to protect me. That way we can cause a change in the institution.
For the sake of our time, we will not be able to go into the fourth aspiration. I think that will be for the next segment. But I love the fourth aspiration, which talks about the fact that Africa must be peaceful. And we'll just take the first point, and then in our subsequent editions, we can just look at it in totality. There must be no gun. All guns must be silent by 2020. And we are in 2018.
Interesting aspiration.
And that is one of the basic things, the first thing under the fourth aspiration. There must be no gun. We are talking about a peaceful continent.
I think everything works in sync. When I'm not getting the justice, I'll take justice into my own hands. So when the court systems are not working, when the judiciary is being overpowered by the executives, by the legislature, I will take the gun through to the person who hurts me. I'll take the gun to the person and kill the person for justice. And so for us to have a peaceful African continent where there are silent, no guns at all, then everything should be in the right process. If it is the court system, it should be done. If there are laws to be implemented, they should be implemented. They should be put in place. If the executive have to sit down to debate on issues that push us forward, that should be done. There shouldn't be interferences, because if you interfere in the justice system, justice delayed is justice denied.
Yes.
So when these things are ensured, I think there can be peace. But if there are weaknesses in our systems, then we can't, to be honest, we can't achieve that. We can't get a country where there are no guns. When we look at the case of Boko Haram, how did they come up? They came up as a result of the northern part of Nigeria not being developed.
Exactly.
They were pushed further in their development process. So they even started as a group that wants to develop just the northern part of Nigeria, have their own country. And then it developed into a terrorist group. So when these things are not being done, people would terrorize. People will go through doing the horrendous things.
They will still pick their guns.
They will still pick their guns. So guns can only be done when there is a level of development, when people don't feel cheated, when the system works. That is where we can have no guns.
Okay.
But for now,
all right,
I think we need guns to protect ourselves.
No, I don't think we need a gun to protect ourselves. Let me just take your last word.
My last word it means that on the issue of peace and then no guns.
Let's not go into the third aspiration, just the fourth aspiration. Just respond to my question. What I'm saying that, so does it mean that when we have good governance, automatically Africa will be peaceful?
That's a good question there. You say when we have good governance, automatically Africa will be peaceful. I would say yes and no.
Okay.
Good governance will ensure that we have all the things that we need, right? But what are the people doing? What are we doing? I would say currently we have structures in place. We have the law, but is it working?
To some extent it is.
Yes, to some, but who is enforcing it? We even have laws that says that you shouldn't put
so it means that good governance
anyhow.
automatically
Good governance,
automatically will mean
it's the
ideal
thought.
Because even in this aspiration, the first time I read the aspiration, I was like, wow, no guns.
They said all guns must be silent.
All guns must be
so
silent.
there will be gun, all right, but the gun must be silent.
But the issue is, what are they doing, or what are we doing to say that the guns should be silent?
Good governance.
Good governance.
You are getting it wrong. Governance is not the people and government. It's
individual.
It is everybody. So when everything is good, I don't think there would be a problem.
There will be a problem. Okay.
That is a debate I want us to close the show with.
On
and that will lead to
I think the licensing of weapons.
No, Sammy, let's not go to that aspect. That will delay us.
Okay.
But then I think that the prime message we want to sell or to share with everybody is that good governance automatically transcends into having a peaceful coexistence among ourselves. Schenineda, your final words.
Okay.
Just within seconds.
No guns. All guns should be silenced. It's an ambitious thing to aspire for. But then I'm sure that once we start working towards it, we'll be able to achieve something.
All right, thank you very much. Do you have any final words?
There are always bad nuts. You can't always get good persons, and so there can't be a silent guns. I don't think that's even possible. There should be guns, but for protection, not individual carrying it to do bad things. But
yes, as for the guns, they'll be there, but they must be used for the right purposes.
Yes,
exactly. Just as we have the knife. The knife can be used for both positive and negative things. Can we say that because of the negative things, we would never have knives again? No, so that is possible. Viewers, thank you so much for joining us. This is AAU Talks here on AAU TV, and we have been discussing Agenda 2063, the role of the youth. This is the second show. We'll definitely have the third show where we look at the fourth aspiration, which talks about a peaceful Africa. We looked at how we can have inclusive governance. We've also looked at how our institutions can work and ensure that Africa we want is achievable, Africa we want is possible. Thank you for joining us, and see you next time.